Let's jump right into this explainer because it completely shatters absolutely everything we think we know about the history of intelligence on Earth. We're constantly looking up at the stars, right? Searching for signs of advanced life. But what if we've been staring in the wrong direction this entire time? What if the answers are actually buried deep beneath the waves, just hiding in plain sight within the geological strata of our own planet? Picture this. It's 450 million years ago. We are talking way, way before the dinosaurs even existed. Imagine a completely different kind of intelligence ruling the deep oceans. We naturally just assume human, land-based civilization is the pinnacle, the very first of its kind. But the abyssal biocivilization hypothesis, it asks us to flip that perspective upside down and consider a totally alien yet completely homegrown predecessor. We're looking at the theoretical blueprint of a highly advanced cephalopod civilization. The idea here is that traces of a super advanced life form, one that evolved in a completely different direction from humanity, actually exist right now, but they're hidden. They're masked behind geological and paleontological data that modern mainstream science often just brushes off as mere natural phenomena. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to travel back to the Ordovician period. Back then, the oceans literally held 100% of Earth's life. The land was just barren rock. In that underwater world, highly intelligent tool-using cephalopods, basically the ancient ancestors of modern squids and octopuses, were the undisputed kings of the sea. They had high intelligence, complex optical camouflage, and tentacles for manipulating objects. Meanwhile, our vertebrate ancestors were just these incredibly weak, tiny jawless fish hanging out at the very bottom of the food chain. Now here is the absolute, non-negotiable environmental constraint, and it's incredibly crucial to understanding this whole theory. In water, you simply cannot use fire like we do on land. Think about human history for a second. Fire is the fundamental catalyst for literally everything we've built, right? We use it to cook, to bake bricks, to smelt ores, to forge metals. But underwater, using fire is entirely physically impossible. This one massive constraint completely closed off the path to a terrestrial, inorganic, mining-based civilization. They were totally robbed of the primary tool needed to build a traditional civilization. Plus, any traditional metal you try to use down there, it just instantly corrodes in the seawater. Deprived of fire and traditional forging, there was no way they could build steel bridges or concrete skyscrapers. But they didn't need to. Driven by their high intelligence, they found a completely different route. They chose to master genetic engineering to expand and manipulate life itself. Their solution was this hyper-advanced biotechnology, where everything they needed wasn't manufactured in some factory, but literally grown and cultivated directly within the ocean's ecosystem. And we're not talking about primitive farming here. This was a rigorous, highly scientific process of bioprogramming. It worked like this. Step 1, they would literally select a base organism, something like a simple sea sponge or coral. Step 2, they'd rewrite its DNA, making it absorb specific minerals like calcium and silicon right out of the seawater. Step 3, they allowed it to naturally grow into a perfectly geometric, functional shape. And step 4, this is the really crazy part. Because these tools were actually alive, they possessed an automatic, built-in self-repairing functionality. Take a look at how a simple crinoid, a marine animal that a lot of people call a sea lily, was genetically modified to become a living gear. They programmed these organisms to grow with perfect geometric precision. And the absolute genius of it? Any operational wear and tear on these biogears doesn't require a mechanic to fix. It just heals instantly through continuous cell division. They were literally cultivating living machines. These biological components didn't just stand alone either. They were assembled into massive, sprawling underwater living cities. Instead of pouring concrete, they cultivated gigantic coral colonies, guiding their growth to form specific, sustainable room structures and complex piping. They used giant crinoid screws to mechanically control the water flow, generating power and creating this flawless circulation system that turned waste directly back into nutrients for the whole ecosystem. It was the ultimate, 100% environmentally harmonious circular architecture. Now, you're probably asking, okay, where is the proof? Well, mainstream science looks at these really peculiar gear-like fossils called screwstones and confidently says, oh, those are just the natural stem ossicles of ancient crinoids. But this hypothesis asks us to look a little closer and consider a pretty radical alternative. What if we are actually looking at the petrified remains of living gears, bolts, and biological water flow pumps designed by this highly advanced cephalopod civilization? And it gets even deeper when we look at the chemistry locked in the rocks. In the geological strata from right around 445 million years ago, what we call the Ordovician-Silurian boundary, we see these sudden, globally simultaneous, and highly unnatural spikes in heavy metals. Mainstream science usually tries to explain these away as large-scale volcanic activity or meteorite impacts. But those theories consistently fail to explain the deeply unnatural bias and the highly specific concentration of the elements found in those exact layers. Let's map those exact puzzling elemental anomalies directly to their theoretical functions inside a hyper-advanced biocity. That massive spike in mercury? Totally unnatural. It likely served as a global liquid electronic brain and power grid. Iridium acted as a room-temperature energy catalyst to electrolyze seawater. Iron and manganese were manipulated by bacteria into self-propagating bioarmor to withstand deep-sea pressure. And the sudden surge in copper? Well, that was a citywide liquid energy grid, literally using the copper-based blue blood found in cephalopods to wire the entire civilization. You might still be wondering, why don't we see ancient ruined buildings lying around the ocean floor like a sunken Atlantis? Well, it comes down to a perfect concealment process. Because their infrastructure was completely organic, cultivated from life itself, when the civilization fell, it entirely decomposed. Over hundreds of millions of years, biological matter breaks down flawlessly. It left behind absolutely nothing but natural rock formations and those highly concentrated unnatural metal deposit layers we just talked about. So what actually happened to them? Tragically, their overly perfect, highly integrated bioinfrastructure had a fatal vulnerability to extreme external environmental changes. A period of rapid global cooling suddenly hit the Earth. This drastically altered water temperatures, instantly freezing and malfunctioning their living city infrastructure. The bioarmor cracked, their massive coolant and energy grids ruptured, leaking colossal amounts of toxic liquid mercury and copper straight into the ocean. This triggered an extreme oceanic anoxic event, basically a total lack of oxygen, that dragged their entire civilization along with 85% of all marine species straight into the brutal OS mass extinction. But come on, a civilization this advanced wouldn't just sit there and wait to die, right? Maybe they didn't all perish in the collapse. Facing total annihilation in a toxic ocean, they formulated an ultimate escape plan. They used the immense power of geomagnetism and their seawater batteries to construct ultra-huge electromagnetic propulsion systems. Essentially, colossal planetary biorailguns. Their purpose was to launch water-filled, fully biological spaceships straight up into the cosmos. Fleeing that dying, polluted environment, they turned to the stars. But they couldn't exactly land on terrestrial planets like Mars. They needed water, so they filled their bioships with seawater, which brilliantly doubled as a perfect shield against deadly cosmic radiation during the journey. Their targets? The pristine, thick ice subsurface oceans of moons in our outer solar system, specifically Jupiter's magnificent moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus. Out there, in the dark, pressurized depths, they could survive, continuing their deep-sea civilization perfectly preserved under miles of solid ice. And this brings us to a wildly fascinating modern connection. For decades, military personnel and sailors have reported unidentified submersible objects, USOs, plunging into our oceans from the sky and moving underwater at physically impossible speeds. What if these aren't extraterrestrial alien visitors from a distant star system at all? What if they are actually the descendants of Earth's own indigenous marine civilization, crossing the void from Europa to return and run reconnaissance on their ancient ancestral home? It leaves us with this incredibly profound and kind of haunting thought to chew on. We spend billions of dollars looking for tiny microbes on dusty red planets, just assuming we are the absolute apex of Earth's 4.5 billion year story. But as this explainer highlights, when we look up at the stars, they are looking up at us from the deep sea. It completely shatters our human-centric view of history. It really leaves you wondering, as we stare out into the cosmic ocean, exactly who is really watching whom.